Hey guys, it's Luke from Turkey Shoot Outlaw. Today I want to talk about scopes a little bit and sighting your scope in. There's always some confusion when you go to the shoots. You'll see a guy trying to get his scope sighted in. He's going the wrong direction, or he's shooting all over the paper and he says his crosshairs are moving, and you just never really know. I mean, is the guy just not familiar with his scope? Does he have a scope problem? So I'm going to kind of talk about scopes today and explain some things. A lot of you guys are going to know some of this stuff, and some of you guys are new and just getting started, and you might not know some of these things. So I'm going to start with talking about parallax. Now, you don't hear a lot of discussion about parallax, and some people, like myself, don't fully understand parallax, but here's what I do know about parallax, and I'm going to take a minute to explain it. So on my gun, I've got just a Conus scope. It's nothing crazy. There's a lot more expensive scopes out there. You got your Leopolds and all that stuff that are way better, I'm sure. But the thing that you need to look for the kind of shooting we're doing is a scope that can handle the shock, of course. And this one's rated for shotguns and most loaders and stuff like that. But another thing that people don't look for is the parallax setting. So on my gun, if you look right here on the end of my scope, I've got these marks, and it's marked in yardage or it's marked in meters, depending what numbers, colored numbers you go by. You want to have that on your scope. And the reason being is because most scopes that you buy are going to have the parallax set up at 100 yards from the factory. If they don't have an adjustment on there, that's what most of them is going to be. So how does that affect us? Well, like myself, I usually shoot at 60 feet, sometimes 75, 90 feet some places. I'm never shooting 100 yards. So when you look through your scope, and I'm sure you've all noticed this at some point or another, or you've seen someone else dealing with it, and they say, hey man, seems like my crosshairs are moving when I look through the scope. Well, there's a reason for that, and that's what we're talking about. That's your parallax. So if the object in your scope is 60 feet, and your parallax is set up for 100 yards, like a lot of these scopes that don't have the infinite adjustments and stuff, when you look through that scope, it looks like your crosshairs are moving depending on where your head's at. So if you move your head and that crosshairs, moving around and stuff, that's why. So you need to have adjustable parallax. If you don't have that, you're going to notice that when you move your head. When you move your head, you're going to see that crosshair moving around. So that's why that's happening. Like I said, this is a Conus. This isn't a high dollar scope. I talked to a few people about these. Everyone seemed to be happy with them for the money. I've got a lot of money in chokes and barrels and stuff, and obviously if I don't want to have to spend a ton of money on a scope, I didn't want to spend it. So I've been happy with this purchase. There's a lot of decent scopes out there. You don't always have to buy a $1,000 scope to be competitive. Like I said, I got 200 bucks in this scope. Shoots great. There's cheaper scopes out there. I think my dad's got a Tasco on his gun. It does okay. It don't stay zeroed quite as good, but for what we're doing, it works. The other thing is adjusting your scope. So there's always confusion with that, and you notice that there's people when you're out there on the line when they're trying to get their guns sighted in before the shoot starts, and there's just always confusion. They end up moving their scope, one way or another, and then they're further away. Well, on my scope, the way it works is if I turn my dial where it says R right, it moves my pattern to the right. Now, I know some scopes are different, but there's always confusion with it. So make sure read your literature on your scope when you get it, so you've got some idea, so you're not out there just wasting shells, you know what I mean? That adds up, So if I'm shooting my target and I'm holding dead center and my pattern's hitting here all the time, I want to move my crosshairs this direction. And I know that gets confusing. Some people think like, man, I want to move my crosshairs this direction to pull that over. That's not how it works. That's not how it works. Because if you do that, you're going to be twice as far away now. You see what I'm saying? So sit down and think about that. If you're confused about that, you want to move your crosshair to where your pattern's hitting. Because if your crosshair and your pattern are the same spot, then that's going to put you where you want to be. So I know it's common sense, but you know, I think a lot of us can be surprised by how confusing it gets sometimes. And some people do get confused by that. So I was wanting to kind of give a little explanation. And once you move your scope, pattern your gun in, okay? Don't just shoot one time and think, oh, I've got it or whatever. Shoot the same target 4 or 5 times. See where the hole is in the target. That's where you want to be. You want to be consistent. That shell you're shooting, it could be an inch in any direction. I mean, you're not gonna shoot one shell and know, hey, I'm dead on. This is right where I need to be. You don't know that until you shoot a few times. So you want to be as consistent as possible. And that's the only way you can do it shooting a shotgun. I mean, you've got to shoot, you know, a few shells in a row into that same, holding it dead center and see where that hole is going to be. And that's how you're gonna win more money doing it that way. I know there's something else I was wanting to talk about. I can't remember what it was. The other thing you're going to want to do once you get dialed in, and let's say your shoot's a 60 foot usually, so that's where you shoot most of the time. Once you get your gun dialed in, you can loosen these set screws up here and turn your caps and zero your numbers. And that way you know, hey, I'm zeroed on my up and down, I'm zeroed on my right and left. And then if you go to other turkey shoots, so let's say you shoot somewhere that's 90 foot sometimes as well. So you're gonna go get patterned in, and when you change these numbers for your 90 foot shoot, which you should just be changing your up and down for the most part, you'll be able to run it up to, you know, however many clicks to get where you need to be. When you go back to your other shoot, you just go back to 0 again. And then you should be about where you need to be for your 60 foot shoot. So that's something to think about as well. One other thing that you want to think about when you're making your adjustments is you look at these knobs, and on mine it says 1/8 inch click, 1/8 inch 1 click. So this scope was designed, let's say 100 feet, which is where a lot of these will be for this setting. So at 100 feet, 1 click's going to move my crosshairs on that target 1/8 of an inch. So if you're shooting, I don't know, half that distance, 50 feet, then that's going to be a 1/16. So 1 click will get you a 1/16 or whatever. So that's something that you can think about. And that way when you're at the shoots and you're like, hey, I'm off this far, you better do the math on it, and you'll be able to get yourself in the ballpark. Take out some of the guesswork, you know, just doing some simple math. And these are pretty accurate, man. They really are. So hopefully these tips will help you guys out and maybe explain things that you're noticing with your scope, or maybe help you get sighted in a little bit quicker or whatever. But thanks for stopping by and watching the video, and hopefully you guys have a great weekend. Thanks.